Spotify, royalties, and AI. 3 words that probably has half you guys triggered right now. Well, recently the new CEO of Spotify has given his thoughts on AI and the low royalty rates that so many of you guys tend to speak about. Today I'm going to be reacting to top music attorney, giving her take on the news, and I'm going to be throwing in my perspective from the producer, songwriter, engineer perspective. Make sure you stay tuned to the very end of this video because there's a lot of valuable information that you're definitely going to need as things change in the music game. So without further ado, let's get into it.
All right, so Spotify's new co-CEO did an interview at South by Southwest, and 2 of the main things that came up had to do with the royalties that are paid to artists and AI music. Now, before going through the interview, what I was reading was that the co-CEO had said AI music is the future of Spotify, which to me sounded pretty shocking, so I wanted to make sure to dive in to see what he actually had to say. And on the issue of Spotify royalties being paid to artists, over the last 18 months, it has been a tortured history of Spotify getting sued for bundling audiobooks together with songs, which therefore dilutes the royalty pool to music creators, to publishers. Now, what we've heard the CEO talk about is that he's been in the weeds, basically running things with the other co-CEO for approximately the last 3 years. He only formally took over at the beginning of this year. So this is co-CEO Gustav Soderstrom. Let's see what he had to say. All right, so in this Billboard article, we're starting with, during your keynote, you said the line, quote, "We believe that AI can create a lot of value for artists and the industry, and our job at Spotify is to ensure that the economics reflect that." All right, so before he gives his response, remember one of the big issues is just with the flood of AI songs. So far, we haven't seen Spotify, one, take a hard line position, and in fact, seemingly has been supporting AI bands and artists, right? They're the ones that are getting featured on Spotify playlists. They have millions and millions of streams.
Man, did you guys hear that? This man said AI is the future of music when it comes to Spotify. I'm paraphrasing, but that's crazy, man, because Spotify has definitely had that reputation of paying people pennies on the dollar. Man, not only that, there's been all kinds of controversies on, what else could be going on behind the scenes, some illicit activities with bots and things like that. But now we have the immersion of AI recording artists, and it's like, okay, you can even cut out a real human being. I don't want to come off like a conspiracy theorist or anything like that. I'm just saying that they have the tools to strip the human element away, at least directly, and then just profit, especially if they're able to really finally work out some of those kinks, some of those issues when it comes to licensing with the major music platforms. So it's like, what will the need for human beings be when it comes to music if you could just take the materials of real humans, create this concoction that sounds good, and then feed it into the platform, and then the human listener could be none the wiser. Let's go ahead and get back into the video.
They have millions and millions of streams. There were also issues of misrepresentations where some of these AI creators were representing themselves to be real people. So in Spotify's silence about all of this and seeing the algorithmic favoring that Spotify was giving to the AI music, I guess you can come to your own conclusion, but this is the CEO's response. So as it relates to creative reactions, it is definitely very different across different groups. The podcasters are maybe more opportunity focused. That's not as common in the music space, and not in the author space either, which is maybe even more rigid and, for understandable reasons, very scared of AI. But with music, it's hard to make generalizations. You have avant-garde musicians who are all the way there with AI, and then some who say never, ever, ever. All right, so this is where it surprised me a little bit. He goes on to say, as a company, we've made the choice to do this the legal and right way. And that has some big consequences. It means we're slower. If you don't really care about the rights regime, you can move much faster. So he goes on to say, well, there's about 24 different companies that are, generating AI music or doing AI generative music. And he's saying they moved a lot faster because they went and just stole everyone's music off of the internet. We know that to be true, and we have filed class action lawsuits on behalf of independent music creators. And interesting enough, he uses the word piracy. He goes, back with piracy, we were much slower than the competition. But that turned out to be the right long-term bet. This is the bet we're making again. Right, so what I think he's referring to is that the announcement came out that they have developed technology. Their technology is done. That would allow users on the Spotify platform to actually remix people's songs. And boy, would that be a real can of worms of legal problems for Spotify if it rolled out that technology. Because you don't have creators' rights to allow Spotify to do that.
You know, that Spotify remix feature, that I might get some pushback for this, but that actually sounds kind of cool from a creative standpoint. You can get Biggie Smalls on a track for like Finesse 2 Times on a Metro Boomin beat. You could mix it all together. You could just create this real cool type of music that, possibly would never be created. And I'm just speaking strictly about the creative side. So let me just say that. Now, from a legal side, from an intellectual property side, like she mentioned, that's just is a free for all of infringement and taking other people's properties and, all the different people who contribute to the music that we all listen to and we love and enjoy. They might find a creative legal loophole to entitle them to those creators' rights, or they might get real slick and create some type of AI fee that's just pennies on the dollar, but technically they're doing the right thing because they're being compensated. I can see something like that happening. Time will tell. Let's get back into the video.
Now, at a different point in the interview, he was talking about how Spotify has removed 75 million spammy tracks. And when we looked at it, we go, well, it doesn't say AI tracks, right? It doesn't say the AI slop that is taking from everyone else's royalties. And for the sheer volume of how many songs are likely being ingested every day, every week on Spotify, I really don't know how significant 75 million is. Okay, but nonetheless, he's saying, you know what? We didn't engage in the piracy. I love the fact that he called it piracy because that's exactly what it was. Going on, I do think AI is an instrument and it's gonna take some time to understand. But where I think the artist community is right, where I agree, is the belief against just throwing technology out there as if it's going to sort itself. Piracy is a good example. It was peer-to-peer, it created a lot of havoc, users got free music, but artists made no money. And he goes on to make the point about how a lot of artists are using AI and they're not really admitting to it. And I know that there's a broad spectrum of like going on Suno, getting some melody ideas, and then you take it, you adapt it into your song. You guys have to be careful because if you don't come up with the bass composition, the melody, the chords, you don't own that bass composition. You just got fingerprinted using Suno, and we have still yet to see. What does that mean later on if you run into a problem with the copyright and now you're in a lawsuit? And I'm really worried because this is going to be used to discredit you and to say you don't own the copyright in your song. So please be mindful if you're using these AI platforms and even just using it in the way that I just described to get a little inspiration from.
Yes, I have been sounding the alarm to all my producers out there about this. I'm not quite sure where some of you guys think this stuff is coming from, but I've seen a lot of producers, even, I'm not going to say names, but I've seen producers with deals who deal with major people just jumping on Suno and just like grabbing stuff and then just putting in their music. And those instrumentals aren't just going to people on the come up. These are going to big dogs. And if the right person or wrong person hears that piece, here's that melody, here's that vocal, like, wait a minute, that sounds like my song got released in 2003. Is that my song? And then before you know it, be careful out there, guys. But let's get back into the video.
Spotify pays less to artists' claim, saying there's one thing I really regret about Spotify, which is that pretty early on, people started talking about per stream payouts and how Spotify pays less. And he goes on to say that narrative is wrong, but it just stuck because everyone was saying it. Going on to say we've paid out 70 billion so far, 11 billion just in the last year. It's been 10% year-on-year growth, and these are enormous numbers. And he goes on to talk about how people are getting this wrong because the fact that Spotify is winning in user retention, keeping people on the platform longer to pay a subscription longer is how everyone allegedly gets paid more than any other place. So for example, if you have a user that stays on the platform 24 months at $10 a month, right, that would be $240. If you have someone who only stays for 6 months, well, that's only $60. And so what he's saying is that Spotify has generated a bigger royalty pool. 70% of that pool gets paid out to music creators. And so he says this lower per stream count kind of analysis is not really the correct way to be looking at this, saying the number one metric they should focus on should be user retention. If you're a subscription business, retention is everything, and retention is very closely coupled to engagement. So to push people over to the lower engaged services is bad for everyone. In a very weird way, the lower per stream is good because it means that people are using the services more, which means retention goes up, which means revenues go up. So AKA a lower per stream payout means you have a more engaged person who is listening more. I don't know. What do you guys think? I was also reading today, Deezer posts first ever annual profit despite total subscriber base declining in 2025. So I guess it had a loss of 26 million pounds in 2024, but in 2025 had a net income of 8.5 million. The result is all the more striking given that Deezer's total subscriber count fell significantly over the course of the year. So the total subscribers had dropped from 9.2 million down to 10 million a year earlier on a like-for-like basis. Now look, in the realm of all the things that Deezer has done, right? It is requiring disclosure if music is AI made on its platform. It prevents payout to AI music to try to protect human authors. So at least to Deezer's credit, which has tried to take a clear position in regards to AI music, whereas here, fairly, I didn't hear anything from the CEO specifically addressing the issue of flooding AI music onto the platform, which is diluting the royalty pool, which was already diluted because of the addition of audiobooks.
You can make that argument as far as, you know, the lower payout means that more people are being retained on the platform. Okay. Now, what happens when you have more people retained on the platform because you're using AI? You're creating artists that you know that people are already gonna like. You're literally creating them from the intellectual property of different people without their permission. You're doing this without their permission, and then you're creating something that you know the listener is gonna already like. So then you can even increase your retention even more in the future, and then you can make the argument, hey, we're paying even more. I don't know what you guys are talking about. So, you know, it's a little bit of the trickiness with the wordplay. You got to be careful with that. You know, if you guys really want to check out independent artists, you want to make sure that you're not having AI slop fed to you, and then eventually you're learning to like it, then make sure that you're actually out there and checking out those independent artists on platforms like Bandcamp and actually supporting them by making purchases. But let's go ahead and get back into the video.
I love to hear him say, we're not going to pirate everything from the internet, from creators. That's great. And will save Spotify from getting sued by top music attorney on behalf of independent music creators.
All right, so let me know what you guys think. What do you think about Spotify's position on AI? Do you feel like they're being upfront? Do you feel like they're being transparent? Are independent music makers just being spoiled? Or do you think that independent artists are being taken advantage of and AI is going to further compound that type of exploitation? Please let me know what you think in the comments. I'll be glad to check it out. Things are changing in the music game, guys. We have to make sure that we keep this dialogue going. So please express yourself in the comments. We have to understand what each other's going through and what we think about what's happening in the landscape. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit like and subscribe. My name is Desmond A, and I'll be back with more great videos. Peace. Wait, before you go, make sure you go to DesmondASounds.com where you can get free FL Studio Patcher plugins, free loops, free guides, everything you need to level up your music production. Once again, go to DesmondASounds.com or click the link in the description. Go there now and totally transform your music production.